Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back. You already know who it is. It's your boy MadeMenMelo coming to you back live with some more Viniitube top 10 anime reactions. We got the 2000s. We bring the 2000s back with the most impactful fights of that decade of the 2000s. That is from 2000 to 2009. That is the decade of 2000. So if you see some anime not in here, they weren't out during that time. So let's go and take a look.
As we've been doing those look-backs at the previous year and decades, I suddenly had this brilliant idea. Why not go a bit back and feature fights from the 2000s? When you think about it, the 2000s is probably the era when a lot of us grew up on anime. Behold the era of the big three, but trust me, those popular shows that set the landscape of this decade wouldn't be all that you'll see. In fact, I had some surprises in store for you, and while I doubt it, knowing you guys, you might even be able to find a show here with a fight that you overlooked by accident. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get the ball rolling and start taking our furthest trip down memory lane to date.
Yes, sir. The OG.
True to its artsy and unique form, Samurai Champloo brings us the first among the top fights of the 2000s. Here, Mugen and Jin battle Karia, the so-called Hand of God. This fight shows much of Samurai Champloo's appeal. The artistic shots are there and the simple fluid sequencing of attacks is there too. I really like how non-Mugen sword fights in Samurai Champloo pretty much go against the typical shonen style of deadlocks and clashes of power. Instead, the fights are fast, fluid, and place emphasis on dodging and moving according to pre-planned moves. Karia is just the perfect type of opponent to set the two main characters on and to establish the overall power level in the series. The two of them got their asses handed to them by the sheer genius and style of their opponent. The 2000s is the era of the Shonen Jump Big Three, and the first one to enter the list is Bleach with its Ichigo versus Grimmjow fight. Grimmjow's one of Ichigo's most memorable rivals, and it's not a surprise that their final fight delivered in all regards. Personally, I don't consider this the best fight in terms of character building or clash of ideals. This fight, however, is king when it comes to good old slugfests, as Ichigo and Grimmjow went at it raw with unrestrained power, just as the 6th Espada wanted. Grimmjow may not be Ichigo's perfect foil, but he sure knows how to make an impact, and despite not having as much internal stakes as some of the previous Ichigo fights, Grimmjow versus Ichigo's final fight remains one of the most memorable and visually imprinting clashes in Bleach. Feeling massively overwhelmed, Ichigo bet on all he had up to this point, his raw will and resolve. With Orihime's fate at stake, Ichigo got that last push he needed and ended up finishing Grimmjow with a slash that also doubled as one of the best fight screenshots in the arc.
Oh, Moribito.
Now here's a show that's rather niche compared to what we've taken a look at so far. 2007's Moribito does start off with a bang, with a great fight coming in as early as the 3rd episode. Balsar shows off how much of a badass female lead she is by taking on several hunters at once. The numbers disadvantage doesn't seem to phase the seasoned warrior one bit as she comes out right on top. Although, I've got to say, is that even really that surprising? Looking at the clip, you wouldn't expect Moribito to be a 2007 show, given how great the fighting looked. Fight choreography and the animation are all ahead of their time in this series. If you think that the fight looks great, then you might want to watch the rest of the series. With its themes and intriguing story, Moribito is a gem that deserves more appreciation.
Definitely gotta watch that.
Team Daiguren and their battle against the anti-spirals is by far the show's pinnacle as far as big fights go. It has all the trigger signatures, over-the-top action, crazy twists and sacrifices, and the spine-tingling finish sequence fueled by fiery voice acting and Serairo Days blasting in the background. Thinking about it now just gives me goosebumps, and I'm sure the same goes for some of you as well. It's hard not to like this fight because it's probably peak TTGL, and everything you'd love about the show is condensed in this one decisive fight with Team Daiguren carrying the hope of humanity on their back. The final battle of TTGL truly is a landmark moment in the late 2000s. It capped off the show that put Trigger on the map, and the studio hasn't looked back ever since.
Okay, gotta watch that. Never seen that before. Trust me, it's a lot of stuff I haven't seen.
For the very few of you who didn't know, Hunter x Hunter had an anime way back, and it's from there where we'll be taking a look at the next fight on the list, Kurapika versus Uvogin. The brute of the Phantom Troop, the unstoppable Uvogin takes on Kurapika in this fight that showcases why fights in Hunter x Hunter are so fun and unpredictable. I don't blame fans for taking him for granted because he was defeated so early, but when you look at the guy in a vacuum, he's just overwhelming. That in turn makes him the perfect opponent to put over and build hype for Kurapika's abilities, as the giant brute of a man gets absolutely destroyed by Kurapika. Through clever manipulations and unpredictability, Kurapika was able to snowball his advantage in the fight and easily win, even healing through Uvogin's attack. To his credit, Uvogin was never the dumb muscle that his boisterous behavior and loud mouth make him seem to be, but he does find himself outmatched here. The icing on the cake is the reveal of how Kurapika's abilities counter his enhancer ability. The battle's been decided, and even Uvogin himself knows it.
That shit was beast. Gotta watch Hippo.
Our fifth place fight is a real slobber knocker featuring Takamura taking on Hawk. Brian Hawk and Takamura are basically foils for each other. Loud, boisterous, and perverted, the two are cut from the same cloth. Riding on a winning streak and being carried by an all-time high, Hawk confidently begins combat against the Japanese opponent. Trading impactful punches and swinging the momentum back and forth, it was really a war inside the squared circle. At the fight's darkest moment, it's Takamura's unstoppable rage that allows him to finally turn the tides. The intensity has been turned up to such an extent that it allows him to finally settle the score and put an end to the undefeated streak of Brian Hawk. The over-the-top fight is part of what makes Ippo such a classic. Where else do you see non-main characters being featured in such epic showdowns? The fight makes Takamura look so badass, and needless to say, he beat Hawk into retirement. Literally. Takamura won't be in another fight as awesome as this one.
Yo, that's yeah. Slow that boy down. You already know Spike and Vincent, baby. If you haven't seen Cowboy Bebop movie,
I'd be hard-pressed to write something about the 2000s without at least mentioning Cowboy Bebop, one of the landmark shows of that decade. Now for this entry, however, we go past beyond the much-loved series and take a look at a fight from the movie, the battle between Spike and Vincent. Really, who doesn't love a good old fist fight to end an amazing anime movie? The two fighters, after numerous confrontations, find themselves in for one decisive face-off, and they simply put out one of the best unarmed combat sequences in anime. The action's fast and furious, and their fight spills all over the place. After numerous setbacks, Spike finally gets the upper hand in what's been a touch-and-go battle. As an aside, I also like how the whole fight simply demonstrates Spike's endurance concurrently with his vulnerabilities. Despite being the ace bounty hunter, Spike seems to be fighting an uphill underdog battle here, but you just don't notice that at first because of the cool sequences. Hand-to-hand combat at its finest.
Oh man, this here boy. If Gara
in contrast to the Clash of the Titans, we have an underdog fight for our third place entry. All you need to take a look at is the build-up and the roles of the two characters, and it's not hard to predict the winner of Gara versus Rock Lee. On one hand, you've got the arc villain who's heavily featured everywhere. Facing him is the resident comedic side character who, despite kicking Sasuke's ass, certainly stands no chance. I mean, let's be realistic about it. However, if you look at the fight alone, you don't get that impression. From the beginning of the fight, Rock Lee took on Gara with all he had and was seemingly on the verge of victory in numerous instances. If he wasn't facing a main character for the arc, that kind of effort from Rock Lee would have certainly knocked any opponent senseless. Seemingly having an answer for everything Gara threw at him, Lee looked at the top of his game before finally taking the obligatory loss. There was no way that Rock Lee was going to win this, but boy did he go out like a true champion.
Nah, fuck that. Rock Lee's back that ass. Now that would have cut that whole arc. We was like, oh shit, we can't have him do it. We can't have him do it. We can't have him do it. Bam, that was his moment.
Over the
Rock
years,
Lee
One Piece has given us a lot of cool and emotional fights.
haven't got that
As one
far
of the
yet.
biggest shonen series out there, it's bound to have several fights that are contenders to make it on this list. Now,
I'm
why
still
did I
on
choose
Skypiea.
Luffy's fight
Well,
versus
I just
Lucci
got
specifically?
into
In addition
Skypiea.
to the emotional context and the
I'm
weight of the
sorry.
fight, I'd
I'm
say that the battle
sorry.
against Lucci
It's
is
a
one
lot
of
of
Luffy's
episodes,
fights that is
Dad.
all about his raw power. For
You
a lot
see
of
that they
fights,
just
Luffy
had a
receives
teaser
help
for
in
the
true shonen
1000th
fashion, whether it be
episode, okay?
surviving Crocodile's
1000. You
initial
heard that
assault through
shit
luck,
right.
or Law helping out
1000
against
episodes,
Doflamingo
okay?
and
Give me
others.
some
However,
time.
this battle against Lucci's a good old physical brawl that, barring some motivations from Usopp, basically is a battle that Luffy won through effort. Not a lot of plot-related devices going on around to help Luffy secure the win, and we're treated to a nice little slugfest that features the two combatants answering each other with blazingly hard punches and physical feats.
I love that Ethical Bean lets me indulge.
Sword of the Stranger.
I've talked about this fight from Sword of the Stranger before. In fact, it topped another list that you might want to check out too, but I guess that's just a testament as to how awesome this climactic battle is. Throughout the movie, we've been treated to scenes of Luo Lang's feats, and the hype for the climactic battle's over the roof. All this time, we were made to wonder what Nanashi could possibly do to defeat his opponent, who's been shown to have the strength of an entire army, and trust me, that's no exaggeration. The fight at the altar is probably one of the best pieces of anime cinematography, not just in the decade, but in anime history as a whole. Think about that. The intensity of the fight's been amped up, and that's all thanks to the animation, the acting, and the soundtrack backing up the classic bout. If you have to pick an anime fight to represent peak anime battles in the 2000s, this one has got to be one of the strongest candidates.
All right.
As we conclude the list, I got
understand
sucked
on a
into a
couple.
wave of nostalgia myself. I'm more of a 2010s
Especially
guy
back
if we're
then,
talking
in
about anime
2000s,
decades, but the
2000s, I was
2000s had a
just
lot of great highlights, didn't it, if I do say so
breaking
myself. From intense
into
sword fights to
anime.
blitzingly fast fist fights and emotional
The DBZ,
clashes,
of course,
this
the
decade
Gundam
did have it
Wing,
all.
you know,
Perhaps
when
you might have some
Toonami
other
was
fights that you
popping,
can recommend
Gundam
from this
Wing,
decade.
DBZ,
I and the rest of the
Adult
community
Swim when
would
it
definitely
just
love to hear
got-
from you.
when
So
Adult
what are you
Swim
waiting
was
for?
just
Start a
taking
discussion
off
on the
with
comment
Robot
section,
Chicken,
and we'll
and
get
you
you in no
had
time.
Inuyasha.
So that's it for now. See you next time
Oh
on
man,
Viniitube.
that's nostalgia right there, baby. Yeah, been in the game. You've been in the game, baby. But that was a good list. That was a good list. Definitely gonna be checking out a lot of these. Definitely, cause I got the way I've been doing these videos. I got at least 50 or 55 that I need to go ahead and try to watch and catch up on, cause I do be lost in some of these anime conversations and names and stuff, and I be like, who the hell are y'all talking about? So that's why I love when people show pictures and stuff, and I be like, oh, okay, I know, I've seen that anime before. Oh, okay, let me write that down. But that's a good list, definitely a good list. That was the top 10 most impactful anime fights of the 2000s. From 2000 to 2009. I appreciate you guys so very much. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. Peace.